Hi everyone, welcome to this Ask the Expert session. What's new in team security and compliance? I'm here with John from the Teams team, as well as several uh, experts in the field of team security and compliance. We're really excited to have you. We hope that you've had a brilliant Microsoft Ignite so far and got the opportunity to see as many sessions as possible about Teams. But this is all about security and compliance. It's a major talking point at the moment and a major need for a lot of organizations. So to get it started today, we're just going to start off directing a few questions for John. Whilst you can use the chat window or the Q&A window in the live events to ask us any kind of questions, we want to answer everything today. So, John, I had a chance to have a look at the session earlier on today. It was a great session. It was really kind of compact. There was a lot of ground that was covered. The first kind of question is there one particular thing or one particular new add to security and compliance within Teams that you would say stood out from the rest? Is there something you're really excited about?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Chris. I will just quickly reference the code of conduct we have on screen. Not that we'll have any issues here, but just want to remind everyone that this is a very inclusive, fun session. So please make sure you're on your behavior. We will keep this up there so everyone can read. But to kind of echo that, Chris, I think one of the common things we've gotten a lot of ask about in this shift into virtual meetings and just the overall virtual environment is that safe and inclusive workplace. And so communication compliance to me is something that I couldn't possibly fathom how important it would be in today's times. And for those not familiar with communication compliance, it's the ability to monitor our not just Teams chat, but actually across Exchange, across SharePoint, any areas of collaboration to monitor essentially for offensive, threatening behavior, foul language that just doesn't have a place in the workplace. We also have the ability to include things like sensitive info leaks or even add in custom dictionary words. So if me as Contoso decided that Chris, you and I got together and decided, hey, there's just a handful of words that we shouldn't be using in our organization. They could be swear words, they could be local culture words, they could just be things that we know just have no place in our company and in our business. We can monitor for that in the same way that we're monitoring for things like data loss prevention, leakage. We can do that with communication compliance. And it was really eye-opening, especially as we got into the education space of virtual learnings, of everyone having that, that fostering a safe and inclusive workplace, of having students and employees and audiences like this where everyone's coming together to get to ask us experts some awesome questions, making sure that chat stays safe. And it's not just being able to block something reactively, right? It's being able to, if something is said, to actually just block it so no one has to see it. No one has to have that negative experience. And then also we have the ability to have that, essentially in our reporting, so we can use that insights to identify, problematic behaviors from an individual. And not that we ever want to have to come to that, but obviously if there's repeated, behavior violations, we need to sit down and have a talk with that person or personnel to correct it. So I will say, communication compliance is an E5 feature, but it's something that I think is really just so important in times like this, because it really helps drive and the fact that we can have these safe, large meetings where everyone feels welcomed, everyone feels good and can engage, and use some of these fun inclusive features like hand raising, etc.
And just for the audience out there, communications compliance was something that builds upon supervision previously. That is something that they may have seen in their Teams admin center today.
Correct. Yeah. So it's an evolution, and I think with how much notoriety it's gotten this week, and when communication first dropped, communication compliance first came out a little over a month ago, it was really just seen as kind of a core compliance item that maybe your legal team is going to be looking at, or maybe a security ops team will take a look at. And quickly, in like less than a month, it turned into this thing that customers are like, this has to be integrated in every collaboration point we have. Anytime there's chat going on or conversations, we need to make sure that we're fostering this inclusive workplace. So you're spot on, and I think it just this past week and past month have shown it's only going to evolve as a product and become even more important into the health of our organizations.
That's absolutely awesome. Now, just kind of moving it on to our subject matter experts. Has anyone seen, what is the demand for communications compliance at the moment? Have you had conversations with your customers? Does anyone kind of want to kind of jump in there and say, are they seeing the demand for this?
Yeah, Herb or one of the other experts, if you want to come off mute, we'd love to hear your opinion on even if you haven't started using communication compliance and with any of your customers or orgs, if you've seen the need for it or et cetera, would love to just kind of hear your thoughts.
So what I see with our customers is like they don't even think about having such a feature within something that is chat. So therefore, they think of something like the compliance stuff and checking these things within emails and checking this stuff within documents. But giving them the option to have chat in there, give them the idea of it, because I think right now they don't even think of that possibility.
Daniel, just a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
When you're having a conversation about Teams, because I find this a lot in the UK, a lot of the conversation seems to steer towards the productive elements of Teams, but organizations, the conversation about security seems to come later down the line, and it seems to be reactive. Are you seeing the same thing?
Can you repeat that? The line was bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. I was saying to build upon the point, you're saying that the organization doesn't really think, about communications compliance and this feature or when it was supervision. And we're seeing it here in the UK as well. The conversations around Teams tend to be a lot about productivity, but don't really seem to consider security as much. Would you agree with that? Is that kind of typical of your conversations?
Yeah, definitely. Same here. So I'm from Germany, so therefore it's quite similar. So that they just don't think about having Teams messages, if it's chat or post within a team, to be something, let's say, official. It's more informal. They do some collaboration. They do stuff they would usually do within a meeting probably, or when having a phone call. But they don't consider it something being protectable or that needs to be protected somehow. On one point. The other point, and this might be something special for Germany, is the part of we have really strong unions here, and then so therefore it's like you're not allowed to control the employee until or down to every detail. So therefore, they must have the option to speak or write freely what they think without having fear of having any consequences. So the tracking of these conversations might raise other issues on the other hand, because it might be some sort of working control or work control.
That's perfect. Habib, I mean, you're from Canada. Is it the same there too? Because it seems pretty similar in the UK and Germany. The experience is security something that is a secondary consideration at the moment over productivity?
No, I mean, I work with a lot of the federal government in Canada, so that security really starts at number one. Ensuring that, just not Teams, but the overall M365 tenant is secured and stuff like that as per the government standards. I have, like, from the communication compliance side of things, I have worked with a couple of clients where they had Skype for Business on-prem with some additional compliance tools that would do what the communication compliance does today. So it's really nice that it's included now within the M365 environment, obviously from a licensing, but it's great that it's there and it's all sort of integrated in with the whole M365 story.
That's absolutely awesome. Now, Herv, coming round to you, we've heard about communications compliance, and John gave us a little bit of a breakdown at that. What do you think? What did you take from the session? Was there something that stood out for you about in terms of security and compliance?
Yes, it's definitively something really interesting because my customers, for example, do not want to use this in our country, for example, but they feel like they feel like peaceful with the capability to set up compliance, communication compliance. But for now, with all the regulations that we may have, and especially on my territory, they don't want to bother the people, but the capability that they would have in order to do that is really interesting for them. But maybe I could ping Nicolas. Nicolas is working on the financial territory, for example. Maybe he could add something more.
Yes, sure. So, hello. Yes, I guess, you know, the need around this type of capabilities around compliance, it can really differ based on the vertical. So, so I work with finance customers, and for them, definitely this is a big part of the conversation, and we need to have this conversation if we want to deploy teams. That's really a key thing in the deploying teams.
And one of the key things that we learned about the session was that having a conversation about team security and compliance is really turning that into a conversation about Microsoft 365 and the broader security and compliance controls. So would you kind of agree with what John was saying in that session? Do you think you have to almost push it away from teams slightly to kind of more broadly speak about Microsoft 365?
Yes. So it's something that so this type of compliance needs on the all your information system is something that is yeah, it's absolutely necessary. However, with my customers, I think that many workloads are already been there for quite a while. But since Teams is fairly new, there are some new questions because we have this new service that we are trying to deploy with these customers, and they want to understand how they can make sure that everything is compliant. Whereas, for example, you know, with email, it's something that they already know how to do.
That's absolutely awesome. Now, one question that I've got, and I'm going to direct this back to John. I had the question from one of my customers this morning. They were asking about customer key. And they were saying that they, and I will talk to them about it later on today, but maybe this is a question that other people have that viewed the session. A little bit about customer key. How does that go beyond the encryption that already comes within Teams, and why would they use it? The name customer key, it kind of asks the next question, how and why.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I'm going to quickly answer another question I saw in the chat because this has come up a lot today, and it's around kind of encryption and GDPR and general compliance. One of the questions we've gotten quite a bit today has just been around, is there a way to delete essentially all meeting information, including chat, after it's happened? And so that kind of goes into this idea of, you know, how do we keep content encrypted? And that's really where Microsoft's vision is at, because we've heard this asked loud and clear that, hey, it'd be great after a meeting is over to essentially, for lack of a better term, blow it up and get everything out of there. But we need to actually archive that or retain it depending on where we are within the world, what regulations and compliance we're following. And so that's actually why Microsoft does encryption the way that we do, encrypting it in transit and at rest, is be able to support enterprise archiving, enterprise retention, enterprise compliance, and regulatory essentially features. And so customer key is that way of helping customers actually be able to maintain their own root key to be able to use for their content encryption. And so while we aren't fully giving, you know, the customer the ability to take their content and store it in a different data center or what else, what it helps is certain customers, depending on where you are within the world as well, if you are managing root keys, there are certain regulations and certain regulatory restrictions that require you as a customer to actually meet certain protocols if you're going to be managing those. And some of our customers did come to us within Microsoft, even when we first came out with, customer key for Exchange and SharePoint. And we've actually gotten a lot of great feedback from these customers on how we can help support them to make sure that when their regulatory agencies are checking in, they not only we not only as Microsoft with our data centers are meeting any requirements, but also those customers holding those root keys are actually in full control of their data, but also meeting any type of regulatory requirement that regulator has as far as how that customer key needs to be held or used or stored or whatever it may be. And so I do think it's important in those organizations that do want to have and manage that key to be able to use that kind of double encryption or that service layer encryption, as we call it, just to be able to, again, stay within regulation, but have that extra layer of management. Because, again, I do want to touch back on the fact that we get a lot of questions all the time about, how can we essentially have this ultra uber level of security, and it ends up being erasing a lot of things, whereas we know from the compliance world, and I think we have, Daniel being from Germany certainly can speak to this, Canada, anywhere essentially, that GDPR is a big item. We can't just wipe everything out from a meeting. As often that we need to retain it. And while we might not want to publicly share it, so we totally hear this question of like, hey, can we just get a chat or a meeting that essentially is done? No one can see the chat anymore. We can't just blow that away and pretend it never happened. We do have to retain that and have it kind of archived. So I think in a long, complex answer, I think customer key gives the customers, again, the ability to have that extra layer of encryption that they feel more comfortable with and managing their own root key. And then part of the evolution of going from just customer key within Exchange to include SharePoint and now excitingly including Teams is the ability to, again, work with customers that help make sure that when they're managing those root keys, they have full control over it, and they're also meeting any sort of questions, answers, and challenges that their regulators have. But this is a fantastic question, I'd say, to turn over to some of our other experts too, that are in, I can say with GDPR is absolutely focused of mine, but in the US, unfortunately, GDPR is not as prominent as we'd like it to be. So I'd love to hear from some of the experts around the world, just kind of how you manage data retention or what type of things GDPR might be challenging.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Daniel, I mean, I guess if you're, from Germany, that would be a great place to start. Okay, Daniel, is you there, Daniel?
No, my issue. I didn't unmute. Sorry.
That's all right.
So yeah, I can, because technically I think it was a German guy who initiated the whole stuff. Mm-hmm. Basically what we find right now in terms of introducing anything from MS365 or M365 is like that for every tool we have to consider where data is stored and if it's still located in EU, at least. And we're still negotiating on that base without going into detail, like how to protect the data that we have, because there's, especially for GDPR, they're considering how to protect data to being moved out of the EU, and this is their major concern. So, and this is where actually most of my, no, all of my customers, to be honest, are stuck with like which services can we enable, which services can't we enable, and or should we enable, and therefore they don't even think about using something like the compliance features right now. This is all moved to, well, actually next year, to be honest. Because they know they have to do some stuff, but right now they're still on basic level, like where is the data at all, and can Microsoft look into it? They don't think about what will the others, like bring in external people, do with the data.
That's awesome. Would any of the other experts like to jump in on this? Herv, is this one as well? That it'd be great to get your perspective on this too.
So I'll go ahead. Hello, this is Nicolas from France.
Thanks, Nicolas.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I think it's really important to have an approach, that takes all the information system into account. So things like e-discovery, legal hold, compliance search, and this type of things, all these problematics. I think one of the strengths of the M365 approach is that we don't have a different tool for each workload. You don't have one tool for SharePoint, one tool for Teams, one tool for Exchange, etc. we're trying to, so each one of them have their specifics, of course, but we are trying to have an approach where e-discovery is this thing that covers the whole M365 spectrum. So yeah, that is one thing I think that resonates with the customers in the discussion I have.
That's really awesome. Now, in terms of, there's one other question that I had from the session, kind of personally. We talked about, and this is something I'm very interested in, is in terms of retention for recordings for Teams meetings. I saw that jumped out at me straight away, just simply because I'm involved in a lot of meetings within Microsoft Teams. And John, one thing I wanted to kind of call out and to try and make explicit, I think that time frame was either October or in November. Now, we've heard elsewhere in Ignite that stream recordings are going to be moved to SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. Is it kind of linked to that time frame? Is that what is kind of when we're talking about retention on meeting recordings?
Yeah, great call out, Chris. It is around that time frame. We are excited to at least share that the rollout we have are scheduled as the end of October, and so you should start seeing that start to roll in some of your tenants, or at least a very formal announcement within the tech community or on some of our blogs that will say, hey, this is that we've officially started shipping this, and you'll see it start popping up in tenants. But I agree with you. It's something that I think is extremely exciting. I think the really cool part about it is the fact that it leverages that M365 security. So wherever those meetings are recorded, it's going to be very similar to if you apply a sensitivity label to a document. Essentially, wherever you try and move that recording to, you're going to have those same, essentially that same encryption. We, as security geeks, I think we all know encryption needs to go wherever that piece of data goes. It can't just be governed by the fact that I have an organizational ID applied to it. We need to make sure that if, Chris, I join one of your meetings, we talk about some super top secret stuff that you're working on, and I go and try and share that and send it out through Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail or any other account. We need to make sure that that is absolutely prevented from happening. Is that as soon as I try and attach that video recording, I get a nice big pop-up that says, hey, you cannot send this attachment. Maybe even better, you get an alert on your screen that says, hey, John G, that person you just had a meeting with, he's attempting to share your confidential info. So that's much further out, but it is tied to that idea of meeting recordings, changing locations. We have a better governance in SharePoint and OneDrive. But I'll say some of it is being independently pushed. We've talked about GDPR quite a bit on this session, which is always expected. It's the idea that, we want to be able to also allow the ability to store meeting recordings, not just in SharePoint or OneDrive, but allow customers to choose, because we know there are certain regulations depending on, country, codes, compliance. So all that is kind of tied together, but the one thing I just wanted to share is, wherever that meeting recording is going, it's that security and that, kind of encryption that roams with it that's really going to be the beauty in this, because we can support the ability to, keep it stored in SharePoint, maybe in a certain data center, in a certain location, which we shared that, I think, 2 years ago, the geolocation of SharePoint data. So there's that benefit, but then also, again, that ability of, if I decide to take a meeting recording and go and, drop it in another, personal OneDrive or somewhere else, we can't take the chance that me as the employees making the smart decisions. So if I start moving that around and trying to share it with people, we absolutely need to be able to lock that recording down, just as we would, a very sensitive schematic, a business plan, or anything else.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome. Now, just one for the Ask the Experts that are on the sessions. In terms of, did you think that is a big leap forward for, being able to now secure your video? Habib, what's your position on this? I mean, I know a lot of people, I've seen some early thing about the move is going to be a bit of a job moving data from Stream into OneDrive and SharePoint, but from a security perspective, this has to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think that the biggest thing right now, obviously, is that some of the videos cannot be shared externally. So you want to be able to provide that content externally, but we also have to have that forethought of how do we secure things that are supposed to be secured, and ensure that we're providing our users the ability to or be notified that, you know, this is a restricted video and stuff like that, right? And I think there needs to be a lot of that thought process that goes in beforehand, right? And then before publishing those or giving the ability to publish externally.
Sure. I'm gonna start calling out a few questions basically for both John and the Ask the Expert. So everyone feel free to jump in at this point, because we're getting through those questions on the Q&A, but there are some that we still have to look at to be answered. Now, one of them is to do with sensitivity labels in respect to education SKUs. Are there any plans to support team sensitivity labels for education SKUs?
Yes, this is a great question. So I always have to be careful. I can't share things too far in advance. We do have plans to support sensitivity labels, not just in the education space, but also across our government regulated clouds, so GCC, GCC High, and DoD. So we do have plans to support that. I don't believe anything is on the roadmap publicly. So for those of you that are either morning, afternoon, or extremely late night, I think you got a little Easter egg there that we will be making some formal announcements in the next coming months. So I definitely say check the Microsoft 365 roadmap. But sensitivity labels at that container level, you will see at some point coming to all of our normal tenant clouds.
That's awesome. Another question here from Abu, the compliance and security features we are talking about in this session, are they available in Microsoft 365 Business Premium? This is one I deal with a lot of small businesses myself. Are they going to have some of these new features, or will they need to start thinking about a move to some enterprise SKUs in order to be able to implement them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something we've actually gotten a good amount of feedback on already in day one of Ignite. Right now, they are going to be leaned more towards an enterprise SKU, but what we're actually working on is we're listening to customers. Some of these things have come up with communication compliance and DLP as customers have come to us and said, you know, these are actually, day one features for us. We have to have data loss prevention and being able to stop data leakage, and also going back to that communication compliance. You know, we have to foster a safe and inclusive workplace. We have to have our employees being able to show up every day and be able to engage in meetings, have external participants in there and feel safe. Of course, in the education space, we know how critical that is too. So I don't say that as a commitment to say that we're going to down level everything into an E3 suite or make them easier add-ons, but we are certainly working with customers to understand that some of these items are literally business critical. Your organization, not just from a GDPR or regulatory perspective, but just a healthy, functioning workplace, right? Again, data leakage is very hard to monitor when everyone is completely global now. We've had that challenge when we've tried to lock down devices and all these, endpoint manager solutions that are fantastic, but that also was a lot of the times when we had people on campus. We had plenty of employees that would be leaving their devices overnight. Essentially, there are no devices left in, on premises overnight. So right now, I will say that they are typically, an E5 suite, especially a lot of things that we talked about that are kind of using that automation, that the intelligence of the graph, kind of those mega wide acting on behalf of your IT group. Those are going to be typically your E5 features. But I do want to call out that we really are listening to customers and starting to take a look at some of these items that, how do we make sure that we're offering our customers these that are completely reliant on them without requiring them to actually commit to an upsell. So again, I don't want to say that we're going to down level anything, but we really are working on this, and it's something that's been refreshing for us at Microsoft to see how important some of these items are, even at very early Teams adoption. Communication compliance is one. We've had plenty of organizations that say, hey, we just started rolling out to our IT department. We haven't had any issues, but we've realized the importance of something like communication compliance. So, how do we get that set up and going? And then you start to see organizations shift with that and say, okay, we're going to get communication compliance set up for Exchange, Yammer and Teams. And that actually becomes, the precursor to their full Teams deployment. And so that was a little surprising to us to see how important that is. And so that's an area that we've really started to look at and say, okay, how do we help customers meet this obligation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess to spin it back around, we fed back to Microsoft in terms of Microsoft Defender ATP. That was in the E5 SKU, and they listened and then they broke it out to standalone. So feedback to Microsoft, they do listen. Now, we're going to have to start to think about wrapping up because this has felt like it's gone in a minute. I can see that most of the questions have been answered at this point. We will try to finish them off. It's been some great engagement. Any last thoughts, John, or for any of our experts? Because this is, yeah, I mean, I guess we could go on talking about this for a lot longer than the time that we have.
We certainly could. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially our experts that are joining us and anyone that might be joining us at odd hours of the day or evening. I'd like to just say I'm going to stay in this chat and keep kind of answering questions via the chat. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us. This was awesome. We love hearing your feedback. There's quite a few things that were shared that have been common feedback. I literally took notes. I will be sitting down with our engineering team this week to refresh and kind of cover these things. And I'd like to just give a super big shout out to our SMEs here and our experts. You'll see these people all over our tech community. They are just as every bit of expert as we are here as product managers at Microsoft. So we love the engagement. And I also just want to give a reminder, if you see people like Chris, Habib, Daniel on the tech community, take their input. Definitely look out for them. Look at their blogs, see what they're saying, because they offer a ton of great advice on just some of the realities of implementations and challenges that customers and organizations are facing. And we know not everything in software is happy. And so sometimes it's good to understand what some of these challenges are, what some of the early items are. So I just want to wrap it up again by saying whatever time of day or evening you're joining us from, thank you very much. Keep the questions coming. I'll keep answering them. Look for us on the tech community. Look for Chris, the other experts. Keep engaging, and we'll keep engaging with you in some of these sessions. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate the time. Thank you, experts, Chris, Habib, Daniel. I know I'm forgetting a couple folks. I really apologize that Amy, I saw, was answering questions. So thank you, everyone. And again, we'll look forward to joining you on the next session.
Thanks, John, and thanks for a perfect session.